We feel guilt when we're stuck in this people-pleasing mode. It could be something from your past experiences, or maybe it was culturally taught by your parents, or it could also be this feeling of letting down someone or letting yourself down. Hey there, I'm Dina, and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about the subject of guilt. Such a hard feeling to let go of. But today I'm going to give you some practical tips that I use every time those feelings of guilt creep up and you need to let them go. So let's start off with, what is guilt? Guilt could be this feeling like you're letting someone down, like you're not meeting someone's expectations, or it could be your own expectations. It could also be a regret, something that you did that you deeply regret and that you can't let go. Guilt is the price we pay willingly for doing what we were gonna do anyways. Guilt could also be a people-pleasing mechanism. A lot of people are raised thinking they have to do what others ask of them in order for them to like them. They could also be afraid of the retribution of what might happen if they say no. So they get into this people-pleasing mode, and if they want to say no, they feel guilt or shame about it. I should be doing what this person asks of me because then they'll like me, they'll value me, and they won't be mad at me. So here are my practical tips that you can use to get through those feelings of guilt. So the first thing you want to do is ask yourself a series of questions. Is this a people-pleasing act? Who am I doing this for? And is this rational, what they're asking of me, or a rational emotion? By asking these questions, you're going to get to the root of why you're doing something. It'll remind you that you're just people-pleasing, or you're doing it just to make someone else happy, or this ask is not very rational of someone to ask of you, or your response is not rational. It'll remind you of why you're doing it and why you're feeling guilty. I have this friend that's always in people-pleasing mode. She's so afraid to say no out of the feelings of guilt. These feelings like she's letting someone down or that they'll be mad at her. So instead of saying no, she says yes when she really doesn't want to do something. She says yes when she feels like it'll be bad for her or her family. She's always putting those needs of others first because she's afraid they'll be mad at her. It comes back to the root of feeling like you're disappointing someone, a feeling like you're letting them down. My friend's guilt came from this place of people pleasing. She was afraid to say no. Her whole life, she was always doing what others asked of her. She was so afraid of confrontation. She was so afraid of saying no that she'd rather just say yes and give them what they wanted. So as years and time goes on, saying no got really hard because she'd always said yes. And so it became this big mountain, this thing she didn't want to do of saying no, and it turned into guilt. When you've been programmed to always people please and to always do what others ask of you, you feel guilty when you want to say no. You feel bad. You feel afraid to say no. It's this feeling of like, oh, I don't want to say no, and they'll be mad at me, and I feel guilty. I remember this one time my friend wanted to say no. Someone was asking her to do a favor, and she didn't want to do it. And she knew she was going to say no, but she spent all this time on feeling guilty and wondering how to say no, and should I say no, and what's the best way to do it without them getting mad at me? So remember that guilt is the price we pay for something we were going to do anyways. She was already going to say no to this person, but she spent all this time worrying how to say no, wondering if they'll be mad at her, and it's just wasted energy and time when she was already going to say no anyways. So just go straight to the point and say no. The next step is to have some self-compassion and assertiveness. Self-compassion is self-love. It's valuing your needs. It's identifying that your needs are important. And assertiveness is setting boundaries. It's knowing that it's okay to say no because it's going to affect your life in a negative way or it's asking too much of you, and that you're not going to be held responsible for that other person's reaction. You don't have to worry about if that other person's upset or if you're hurting their feelings. That's their problem. That's their issue if they don't know how to respect someone's boundaries. And usually, if you keep doing it over and over again, you're drawing that line in the sand, eventually you're teaching that other person that you have this line that you will not cross. You have this boundary. And so you're teaching them how to treat you. And if you do it enough times, they'll stop asking you and you'll stop feeling guilty. So my last tip for you is get out of the feelings of guilt and get into problem-solving mode. Find a solution. Whether it's people-pleasing mode, find a way to say no. Or if it's something that you did that you feel guilty about, find a solution to move forward. Focus on solving the problem versus staying in that feeling of guilt. All right, so to recap my tips on how to let go of those feelings of guilt, we have number 1, ask yourself a series of questions. Who am I doing this for? Is this a people-pleasing act? And is this rational? Number 2, have some self-compassion and self-love along with assertiveness. By taking care of you, validating your feelings, and setting boundaries, you're having self-care and self-love. And tip number 3, get into problem-solving mode and stop being in the feelings of guilt. Find a solution and find a way to move forward. So I want to leave you with one last message about guilt. And that's the only person you're truly hurting is yourself. You're wasting time and energy mulling over how you're going to hurt someone else's feelings. But if you're doing something that's valid for you, that's taking care of you, and saying no is just a respect for yourself, you should never worry about how it's going to affect someone else. That's their problem. Remember that guilt is anger directed at ourselves. Learn to be okay with setting boundaries, with taking care of yourself, and being empowered by saying no. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. I truly appreciate it as always. And I just want to remind you that feeling guilty is a people-pleasing act. Feeling the fear of letting someone down or disappointing them or facing judgment shouldn't outweigh your own desires and needs.